You'd think it's a pretty simple question, right? When should a kid start school? But as we're about to see, the answer to that question has these huge, sprawling implications for families, for entire communities, and yeah, even for nations. So let's get into it. I mean, this is a question that pretty much every parent on the planet faces. Do you push for that head start, get them in early, or do you give them that extra gift of time to mature a little bit more? Well, it turns out there's no easy answer, and honestly, the way different countries handle it is all over the map. So the whole debate usually boils down to these two big ideas. You've got the early bird camp, which says, hey, more time in a classroom means more time to learn. Makes sense. But then you have the gift of time crew, arguing that letting a kid develop more before they ever see a classroom is the real secret to success. But, when you actually look at the research, the reality is way, way more complicated. And that's because this isn't just about test scores in the first grade. Not at all. We're talking about these really long-term effects on a child's motivation, their social skills, even the entire path their life takes. Okay, so to really get this, let's look at some fascinating research out of Germany. Instead of just tracking grades, these researchers looked at something they called affective motivational attitudes, which, let's be honest, is a very fancy way of asking a simple question. How does a kid feel about school? Do they actually like being there? And what they found was, wow, pretty profound. The age a child started school had a direct link to how much they enjoyed it and how much effort they were willing to put in. Now, this isn't just some small, fuzzy detail. This can literally determine which academic track they end up on years down the line. It's a huge deal. And this isn't just a German thing. Over in Norway, they took this idea even further with what they call a life course perspective. And as you can see from this quote, the whole point is that a school policy doesn't just stay inside the school walls. It ripples out. It affects social behavior and major life events for decades. This timeline just lays that ripple effect out perfectly. You've got this one decision right here at the start about when a kid enters a classroom, and that decision can have echoes decades later, connected to something as deeply personal as when they decide to start their own family. It just goes to show you the stakes on this are incredibly high. So if the age matters that much, why don't we just pick a better one and call it a day? Well, it's not that simple. The research is really clear on this. Changing the starting age is like tipping over the first domino. If the rest of the system isn't perfectly lined up to handle it, the whole thing can just come crashing down. And this right here is the million-dollar question. What happens if you change the law and all of a sudden you've got 5-year-olds in first grade, but you're teaching them with the exact same curriculum and methods you designed for 6 or 7-year-olds? Well, what happens is you create a massive mismatch that can completely undermine the whole point of the policy. One researcher, Shikinskaya, really nails this, pointing out that for any of this to work, you need a holistic approach. You can't just tweak the age. You've also got to completely reform the curriculum, update your teaching methods, and make sure teachers are actually trained for this new reality. You have to change the entire system top to bottom. And this really points to a bigger idea, what's called the educational ecosystem. Research from UNO highlights this so well. School is not an island. A child's success depends on everything around it. We're talking high-quality after-school programs, strong community support. All of it has to work in harmony with what's happening in the classroom. But here's where the story gets really wild. Because even when countries try to get all of this right, there can be some completely unexpected and kind of shocking consequences. Check this out. This finding from Finland is just startling. Researchers discovered that within the same grade, the youngest kids, the ones born right before the cutoff date, were way more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than their classmates who were almost a full year older. But why? Well, the researchers don't think there's a sudden epidemic of ADHD. Instead, they point to a huge risk of overdiagnosis. What a teacher might see as a disorder could simply be normal immaturity. You're comparing a kid who just turned 6 to one who's almost 7. It's a huge developmental gap, and we might be mistaking that for a medical condition. Just let that sink in for a moment. And these side effects aren't just clinical. Let's jump over to Zimbabwe, where a similar policy change didn't just cause problems in the classroom, it sparked real social tension that rippled through the whole community. Yeah, as documented by Sabanda, this change kicked off all sorts of things. Conflicts between parents, huge debates about homeschooling versus formal school, and these intense disagreements over what readiness even means for a child under 7. It put a massive strain on the relationship between schools and the communities they're supposed to serve. It just goes to show you, these policies are deeply cultural. Okay, so we've looked at the long-term impact, the need for the whole system to change, and these crazy unexpected consequences. And it all points to one really clear conclusion, which is our final big takeaway. This is about the system, not just a number. And honestly, this might be the single most important insight from all of this. After looking at research from all over the world, it is crystal clear there is no magic number. An age that works in Finland's system might be a total disaster in Zimbabwe's system. Focusing on finding the one perfect age is just, it's missing the entire point. So what does work? Success isn't about the age. It's about the system we build around our kids. And the evidence says that system needs to have things like a flexible curriculum that's ready for different developmental stages. It needs teachers who are well-supported and well-trained. And it all has to be built on this foundation of a deep partnership between the school, the family, and the whole community. And so that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Maybe, just maybe, we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Instead of obsessing over the perfect starting age, maybe the real challenge and the much better question is, how do we build the perfect support system for every child, no matter when their first day of school is?